And morena there to Andy Finch. Just
good morning.
Kick my rubbish bin.
Morning.
Oh, here he is.
Yeah.
Morena.
Sorry, I'm late.
Thank you. So we'll just kick off the meeting there this morning. Just scrolling through here, the agenda, make sure I'm at the right page. I haven't got here a karakia, and if it's okay with you, Kelly, are you there? I would like for you to do a little karakia, and then I will read the purpose of the Local Government Act. You're just on mute, Kelly.
It's clever, isn't it? Okay. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, he ake ana te ātakura, he tio, he hoka, he hauhu, hauie, huie, tai ki ai.
Kia ora, Kelly, and morena tātou. So we all hear about infrastructure, and Kim's just going to pull that up for me again on the screen. So the purpose of the Local Government Act to enable democratic local decision making and the action by and on behalf of communities to meet the current and future needs of communities for good local infrastructure, local public services and performance of regulatory functions in a way that is most cost effective for households and businesses. In this Act, good quality in relation to local infrastructure, local public services and performances of regulatory functions means infrastructure, services and performance that are effective, efficient, and appropriate to present and anticipated future circumstances. So just a reminder about what we hear today and the intent of that. So we'll just move on there. We don't have any deputations, but we have raised that next infrastructure meeting, Councillor Stratford will do a short deputation about her Three Waters portfolio. And depending what's on the agenda as well, and Court may do a verbal update about roading. Today we've got a lot on the agenda about roading. In terms of apologies and declarations of interest, I haven't had anything raised, and we'll raise those as we come to each item. And if there are any conflicts, please do raise those at the time. So we'll move on to 4.1, confirmation of previous minutes. And do we have any matters raised about those previous minutes, please? No, I can't hear any of those. So do we have a mover? Kelly. And I'm happy to second. And all in favour, we'll go through the list. Mayor Carter?
In favour. Sorry, I forgot to unmute.
I'm in favour. Deputy Ancourt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In favour.
Dave Collard?
In favour.
Maddie Radich?
Aye.
Councillor Stratford?
Yes.
Councillor Busich?
Aye.
Member Edmonds?
Aye.
And Member Gardner?
Thank you. In favour, thanks.
Thank you. Unanimous. So we're at now section 5, Three Waters Programme of Works. And I note that we do have Tanya here and also Andy. Andy, did you think to say first anything to raise before we move on to this topic, this item?
Through the chair, I just noticed before we do, Aisha's got her hand up. Did you want to say anything before we go on to papers, Aisha?
Apologies, no, that was a mistake.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. Okay.
I'll also just let you know I'm better with the chat instead of the hand raising, so that I note that you're wanting to speak and such. So yeah, thank you, Andy.
So through the chair, I do have Tanya here who will talk in detail or any detailed questions around the paper. This is looking to make the boat go faster, as it were. We have a significant capital works programme this year, well in excess of the 50 million that we've previously highlighted as being achievable. This is looking for approval for a direct appointment of a programme of Three Waters work to Far North Waters, our alliance partner. Total value around 2.5 million out of the total Three Waters budget of 12 million. Far North Waters, as you're aware, do employ a significant volume of local people, and also they subcontract a lot of work to the local suppliers around the region. I'd also point out that giving Far North Waters a portfolio of work that keeps their capital works team busy through the year does support our emergency planning activity in terms of they have that resource available to us. And I'll refer back to the drought last summer where Far North Waters having that capability to respond quickly and flexibly to installing temporary supplies did ensure that council managed to keep a continuity of supply across our reticulated supplies. So this is really just approval for us to give a proportion of the Three Waters budget to Far North Waters to keep the capital team busy, noting that a significant portion of that money will be spent locally. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Did you want the author of the report to speak, or Tanya?
Tanya, is there anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I don't think so. I think just to reiterate and support Andy's comments around trying to find ways to improve delivery. The projects selected are operational by nature. There is also, they've been nominated, if you like, to ensure that all health and safety measures are met on operational sites, that they're in accordance with the current water bylaw that allows only particular people to work on live water lines. So just in support of Andy's comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Would anyone like to move this paper here?
Just hang on. Can you hear me?
Yes, Councillor Radich.
Andy, why I looked through this report. Nothing's been mentioned regarding the Kairau Dam. They're not involved in this.
Maddie, if it's okay with you, I'm just going to move the motion. Do I have a second?
All right,
just so we can open the item. So I'll move that motion. Do we have a seconder, please?
I'll second it. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Anne Court. Maddie, I'll give you your time to speak now, and then I'll open the floor with Anne. Be the seconder.
To you, Andy, I noticed there was no expenses involved with the Kairau Dam.
Through the chair, Councillor Radish will be aware that at the last council meeting, the funding for the resilient water supply was approved. This paper sits outside that piece of work, and we're planning now around delivering those additional pieces of work that will sit outside of this and may be subject or may not be subject to a future report to Council around procurement methodology.
All right, what worries me is because there's a lot of money being spent on the Kaikoura Dam at this very moment. And we, a couple of years ago, we moved a motion to get out of there. And we need to knock that on the head urgently because it's costing us hundreds of thousands.
Thank you, Mary. I think what's being raised to the staff is that we haven't had an update about that dam for some time, and if we can have a paper.
It should have been in this report.
This report is about renewals and programmed works into the annual plan for direct award.
It is a renewal.
I'm sorry. Can we please move on from that topic? And Andy, can you please note that we do require a report for an update about that dam? Councillor Radic is right that we need to have an update as elected members.
Through the chair, could I ask that we do that through the Kaitaia Water Project Steering Group? I am conscious that the focus of the team so far and on the Kaitaia project has been getting the approvals and the contract in place for delivery of the Sweetwater pipeline into the reticulation. Previous conversations with elected members has focused on ensuring the priority is about getting the resilience of water supply to Kaitaia. Once we've got that in place, to continue, then look at the options for withdrawal from the Kari Dam.
Andy, we don't talk about the dam in Kaikoura water. We talk about the Aoni River and the Sweetwater aquifer because we don't draw water from the dam anymore. I can't see the purpose of us bringing up in Kaikoura water.
Mr. Finch, if you're there, can you just please note down the request for a paper or at least an update in terms of steps and where we're at with that and confirmation about any money spent or not. Just to give governance reassurance that, as Councillor Radic has raised, we're not spending money on the Kaikoura Dam when, as you have raised, the focus isn't on that at this time.
Well, we have, Felicity. We've spent hundreds of thousands. But anyway, we'll carry on.
Noted. Thank you.
I noticed that we don't have any comments here from Councillor Court. I have John Busich next.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like an update on the dam, given that we moved that time ago, and that should be to Council. What I'd like, though, is just a question of Andy Reason's $2 billion, which he mentioned as director, which does raise my concerns. It's a very large director award. Can you assure me, Andy, we're not breaking any government guidelines in terms of director awards to that extent?
So Councillor Busich was asking about if we're breaking any guidelines for direct award for this this item.
Through the chair, I'll let Tanya comment after me, but my understanding is these are all small value projects that are aggregated and therefore fully comply with the Council's current procurement strategy. Tanya, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, I agree with that as well, that it's a variation to the contract as well, which the Operations and Maintenance Alliance contract allows for, and then the value being under the $3 million that the Infrastructure Committee is permitted to approve.
Thank you, Tanya. Also on page 21, it outlines the value of each of the projects and then the cumulative value. So it's a number of smaller projects that are together. We also have got Member Edmonds next.
Thank you. In the background, I just thought this was background information about it noted the council bylaw, but Tanya made another point to mention it. And it confuses me that, while we know the bylaw exists, I am unsure why 2 mentions of the bylaw was pertinent in this particular case. I mean, if you've given a contract to somebody, then you've given a contract to somebody. That's effectively in writing. So why would 2 mentions of the water bylaw be needed to support this motion?
I'm sorry, Member Emmons, I'm not sure why that's relevant to this.
Oh, no. Well, I mean, you've got... Okay, no, that's cool. It concerns me that we've got what I would concern 2 mentions of totally irrelevant information, unless it's relevant. Okay, so what is the relevance of the 2 mentions of the bylaw in supporting this recommendation, or is it just noise?
Madam Chair, may I reply?
I can't see you there, Tanya, but yes, please bring your face up.
Oh, am I not? I think I'm there.
There you go.
So there are water meter renewals for no other reason than that it's an example of the types of projects that we're asking to be a direct award, and nothing more than a reiteration of an existing bylaw, Member Edmonds.
Okay, cool. Next question is, I noticed the amount of money being spent on water meter renewals. Member Vucic and I brought up many times the idea of electronic meters and all the benefits that they bring. And the standard response has been, we've looked at it, it doesn't make sense. I've got 2 comments to that. Certainly, I've asked for some kind of evidence that information, that research has been done and the conclusions, and never got a reply. But the second thing is, all around the world, water meter renewals are being done electronically with huge returns. I can show you maps of places where it's just littered with electronic water meters, and the amount of money and the benefits, which is the same benefits the Member Vucic and I have been reiterating for every time, that they claim. So, I mean, we're not out on a limb here in terms of water reading savings, but certainly more about water leakage. And we always bring up about water leakage and the amount of water we lost, and about the drought. So I wonder whether now's the second best time, after the last time we raised it, to consider electronic water meters.
Through the chair, if I can respond, I can't recall the exact date, but around about 18 months ago, when Barry Summers was employed by council, he prepared a report that either went to full council or the then Infrastructure Network Committee that considered electronic meters. And that was considered at that time. I fully accept that in the intervening period, technology would have moved on. And if you allow me, I will perhaps have a look, revisit that report and just see what it says, and see if there's an opportunity there and things have changed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Finch. I think that would be advantageous, and yeah, I think Member Evans has raised relevant points about the advantages, and we'll have to look at those costs. So put that on the to review list. We've got Member Gardner next.
Hi, I was just looking at the Awanui improvements for 300,000. Can someone explain it to me in the water space, please? Because I didn't realise they had water connections.
Member Edmonds, this is for both water and wastewater.
Yeah, but the wastewater's underneath, isn't it? Total water, they're in the total water space, 300,000 for improvements. Awanui.
No, that is right. Tanya, do you have a response for that?
Through you, Madam Chair. That is the Awanui intake. So a South Road, I think it is, just where we draw the water from.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm thinking about Awanui Township. Right, thank you.
Thank you. And being the move, I just wanted to raise that I think it's great that we're aggregating smaller projects so that we can get more things done by planning in advance, so that it's ready to do come the finance being available for that year, and that our contractors can also increase their capability to deliver. So well done, Tanya and Andy, with bringing this to us.
Thank you.
So I'll bring it to the vote. If we can bring that up, please, Kim. So Mayor Carter,
Aye, in favour.
I'm in favour. Councillor Court,
Thank you, Madam Chair. In favour.
Councillor Collard,
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Radich,
Yep.
Councillor Stratford,
Aye.
Councillor Vusic,
Aye.
Member Edmonds,
Yep.
and Member Gardner.
Yes, aye. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a unanimous vote. So we'll move on now to item 5.2, Otawa Bridge. We have the recommendation there, and do we have a mover for that item there?
Kelly.
Kelly, thank you. And a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second it. I'll second it.
Councillor Vusic. Councillor Stratford, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, in reading the report, it's understandable why we're here again for the increase, but it is a little disappointing. But we just have to remember the fact that this bridge services 100 homes. Approximately 130 families live in those homes. There's 7 dairy farms. That's 7 milk tank movements a day. There's a church, 2 marae, a kohanga reo, 2 large forestry blocks. So, there's more forestry trucks that would normally use this bridge, but at the moment they're on Ninahi Road, which is putting more impacts on the residents that live on Ninahi Road. And then there's the school transport that would normally use this bridge, but they're unable to at the moment. So, yeah, we do need to support the long overdue upgrade on the Otawa Bridge. And I think, it would have been, it probably wouldn't have cost more if COVID hadn't arrived. So we've just got to remember that, And it's a district-wide rate for our people, and we all support each other with our roading issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. I have Councillor Court next, then Councillor Collard, and then Councillor Vusic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any problem with the contract. We've actually already approved the award of the contract. It's a good project. So thank you for reminding us, Councillor Stratford. I do, however, have some concerns with the report. And in accordance with our recommended practices while we're doing virtual streaming, I sent an email through on Friday outlining my concerns, but I haven't had a response. So I'm hoping somebody from the staff has received the email and will be able to respond to my concerns. The first, and I think it's probably easier, Madam Chair, if I just read my email. So, in reviewing agenda item 5.2, Otawa Bridge N28 replacement, I would like to request clarification on the legal precedent that permits a contractor to claim $104,000 due to COVID-19. If force majeure is the legal principle that is being applied here, and I am assuming for the sake of argument that it is, then we need to be clear what they are claiming and why. I'm going to deviate from script here. The report just tells us that they've incurred costs. The report does not tell us how or why those additional costs have been applied. A party is unable to claim a benefit merely because the task becomes more difficult, more expensive, or less profitable. Force majeure must be quantifiable in the event of a pandemic and or any other unforeseen event that is outside of the party's control and that renders performance impossible or impractical. That means I want to know what makes up the $104,000. David Fryer from Bell Gully, when questioned on whether COVID-19 triggered force majeure, stated it depended if this was specifically addressed in the original contract. While it is a relatively standard clause in a legal agreement, the wording is critical. The clause would normally include the words disease or similar. If not, then force majeure is not applicable. However, common law doctrine of frustration applies. I am also mindful that the government introduced significant wage subsidies and business grants, so clarity on what underpins the claim would be advantageous to help inform decision making. And I'll deviate from script again. This will be the first of hundreds, I suspect, so it's not $100,000. This is going to form the precedent for our decision making moving forward. And finally, and I'd be more comfortable if we were in committee here, but also what comeback is there on the geotechnical investigation report that they did not at a minimum signal that they could not assess the construction material that sat behind the abutment and address this in their report by a simple waiver. This seems like a very rookie mistake in that an engineer should have identified a potential risk and put a contingency into the report to be on the safe side. That's the end of my email. So in essence, what I want is some answers from the staff, because we've been asked to fund an additional $104,000 of ratepayers' money, and I do not know what underpins that request other than COVID, which is not a good enough answer for me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Can we have a response from Andy?
Through the chair, my apologies, Councillor Gore. We don't appear to have had your email in advance, so I'll go back and check back on why that hasn't happened. I understand Glenn has notified that he would just like to talk to the first part, and then maybe Calvin and or Aram around the detail of the claim. Glenn?
Mr. Finch, can I just clarify that was sent to the CEO office at 12:59 p.m. on Friday afternoon last week?
Noted, and apologies, I certainly haven't seen it.
Through the chair, I became aware of that question about, what's the time? About 3/4 of an hour ago, and I forwarded some various information through within council just to pull some answers together. But in summary, and I'll hand it over to Kelvin or Greg from the NTA who have got more information. I think they'll be able to answer Anne's question in detail. But essentially, it's not through force majeure. It's through a variation to the contract, and it's following a whole lot of guidelines that have come out recently in relation to what public and applicable to private sector as well should consider in terms of allowing variations for costs associated with the COVID-19 lockdown period. And specifically, there's further guidance around how it would apply to NZS 3910 contracts. So they do need to be dealt with individually, contract by contract, and what assessment has been done. I think that's where Greg and Kelvin will be able to provide a bit more answers around that. In terms of how they've quantified that 104,000, I'm not sure of those details, but Greg may. If Greg or Kelvin, have you got anything to add?
Yes, I can add to that, Glenn. Through the chair. Yeah, exactly what Glenn was saying. The force majeure there's no clause in 3910 for that as a standard document that we use. So there was a lot of debate and a lot of industry discussion through the Association of Civil Engineers, the Contractors Federation, the local government and central government of how this should be handled. And basically where it landed, exactly what Glenn was saying, was that it can either be handled as a suspension, so we suspend the contract, or a change of law. And both of those items result in a variation and allowing the contractor to claim for a variation under the normal framework of 3910. So that's what they've done. And with that process of going through, they then are entitled to claim what costs they deem to be necessary or that they've encountered because of this shutdown or this suspension. And the general process also that process is they will submit that claim, we will review that and then deem to see where the evidence is to see if they have incurred true costs associated with the shutdown. So those costs usually are extension of time sort of cost related. So obviously the contract's gone on longer, so there's several weeks where they've had to sit back. It looks at labour in terms of the costs they've encountered in terms of their staff and keeping key staff on site and available to come back to that work. And keeping in mind with that as part of the claim, we do look at the government subsidy on that. So then with the government subsidies that they've been paid out, so we can check that online, see what they've done, see what they've claimed, and then the shortfall in that for key personal staff is then what they're claiming. They're entitled to claim for plant that is either on site or that has been associated with the works. So if they've got anything that's sitting on site, which then again relates to their extension of time claim of if there's fencing, if there's toilets, if there's trucks sitting on site, if all that equipment that's sitting there. And again, that relates back down to there's certain guidelines that we have to follow in terms of do they own the plant, do they not, is it on hire, and are we paying the hire costs? Are we paying the interest costs if they've taken loans to cover that? So it's quite detailed in going through the process and what they go through. So we're currently in the stage of the first step being is they've submitted the claim. And this is what they've submitted the 104,000 for. Is that the amount? Yeah. So the process is now that we have to then we have to go through, review that, and we've asked them to provide justification for certain items, to go through that and analyse that. We don't expect that we will be paying that 104,000. That's just where we are at the moment, and to come to council and to get the timing, then I suppose to be prudent, we have to allow for that full amount at this point. We expect to work through that and have that reduced significantly. In talking with other claims that may come through in terms of for council, there has been several that have come through, and we are sort of looking at them. The majority of them have been very minimal, so they haven't needed to come back to council for significant increases in the contract. So it is dependent on what each individual contractor submits as a claim, and some have taken the approach where they haven't put in big claims, even though they may have been entitled to. Others have then put in what they believe to be their true costs, and we are currently working through that. I hope, does that answer the question?
It goes in part to answering the question. Thank you. Can you please provide some feedback on the geotechnical investigation? And I just draw your attention to page 34 of the agenda. We reflect the dates at the. Sorry, I'm hoping that's not my feedback. That these costs are a direct result of COVID-19. So I'm unsure when you're talking about a suspension or a variation of the contract, how the two align, unless it's to do with the material behind the bridge abutment.
Sorry, Greg. Calvin's computer's muted because we were getting a little bit of feedback.
Oh, sorry. You can hear me now? There's two elements to the request and the agenda that we've put up. It's obviously the COVID claim, which is what we've just talked to in itself, which is independent, and that was just relating to the events of COVID and the shutdown and the costs associated with that. So that's the variation that the contractor is claiming. There's another element to the increase that we're asking is the geotech conditions and the additional work and the change of scope that we've had to undertake due to the geotech conditions. As part of the investigation, what we've done and what the consultants have done is they've done some bores down near the riverbed for the paths and the main structure that would hold the bridge up. But sitting back from that, then you've got the riverbank and the material sitting in there in the abutment walls. And it is quite common to look at that and do visual inspections of that. And that's what they've done. And they've made the assumption that a gabion basket wall would be sufficient to hold that. and be able to retain the abutment walls. But unfortunately, when they started to excavate and move the bridge, that wasn't the case. So they've had to go now increase the size of the retaining wall and allow for some piling to help support that bank and the structure. And that's where those costs have come from. There is a discussion that we need to have internally. Have we done enough in terms of when we're investigating and undertaking sufficient geotechnical investigations at the time? Was there more that we could have done? Yes, I say there would be. Parts of it I don't think we could have until we actually removed the bridge to get into part of it. To actually assess some of the ground conditions that are here, but there is certainly more that we could have done, and we are taking that on board to look at future ones going forward to try and avoid these conversations of coming back and variations.
So through the chair, just adding to what Greg said about the future stuff, the idea that those conversations we're having is to make sure we have a full understanding of cost at the outset, so that there aren't variations. Had that been done, this approach still would have been required and the cost still would have been required. It just would have been a known cost at the start of the project as opposed to a variation through the project. So what we're trying to do is implement some processes so that there is a true as good as possible cost of project. Unfortunately, with these bridge replacements, a lot of the time you can only find out what the ground conditions are of the existing bridge once you actually get into the work, and it's something we've had on a couple of bridge projects lately, which is not just UPNDC, which has led to these conversations with the geotechs about what else we can do up front.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No further questions.
Thank you, Councillor Court. Also, just like to raise the current wording of the motion doesn't reflect the response there from the NTA about the COVID response funds still being reviewed. It just says approve. It doesn't say subject to final review of the NTA of COVID. So I'll just raise that now and we'll move on to our next items with, we've got Councillor Collard next.
Thank you, Councillor Foy. My questions were very much asked by Anne, and along with the COVID, I had a similar question about that, and similar questions as to why the 104,000 when we know about the wage subsidies and all that sort of stuff. So that has been explained for me. The second was around the geotechno. What I'm concerned about, what is the value of a design consultant doing a geotechnical investigation when they make assumptions that results in cost increases over and above what we are anticipating? How do you budget for that sort of thing if this sort of thing is always happening to council? It is of great deal of concern to me that we go along these lines, and I hear what the previous speaker from staff said, that it would have become a cost anyway in terms of a variation. But the reason that you have a consultant is to discover all of this stuff, and we haven't done that. So it's do we need better consultants, or what do we need to do to fix this problem? Thank you.
Do the staff want to respond at all to that? I think they have addressed that in their response about doing earthworks as always has uncertainties, until the time that you actually remove the bridge and start digging.
Through the chair, maybe just add one further point. There is a balance between the upfront investment cost in terms of the amount of investigation versus the benefit of what you're going to find. And as we pointed out previously, a lot of these cases, even doing a more thorough investigation would not necessarily identify some of these things. There is a fairly standard safe assumption that if an abutment is already in place, if the structure is already in place, then that structure was built in a sound way. And in cases where it's found not to be, that's what we discover when we're through the construction process as opposed to prior to it. But as we mentioned earlier, we are working with the consultants about what we can improve up front to get a better idea, and it may result in larger contingency amounts having to be added to project approvals where there are these unknowns. And also we're looking at how we can actually have some investigation costs up front for some of these projects to get a more, I guess, refined budget when it comes to capital works on bridges and abatements.
I think we've got Councillor Vucic and then Mayor Carter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Stratford summed up very well how important this is. What I find, though, is quite disturbing is that there's been quite a bit of loss to forestry in other areas, not having this bridge done probably years before. And so there are a number of concerns for me. One is we don't seem to be planning properly ahead in advance to critical bridges and letting them get to the state of failure. And secondly, this is the second time there's been an increase, and I really appreciate Councillor Court's response because they raised exactly my concerns. I believe that if you're dealing with COVID, you've got to give full proof of what's going on there. The wording doesn't indicate that there is going to be a valuation of that claim at all. I would prefer that in there so that we're not committing to that full amount should they actually come back. Because you can't just simply state, oh yes, COVID has given this loss. You've already spoken and given us an update on the variations that are there, and you just can't claim loss without some proof. So I would like to see the evidence of that, and I'm making the assumption that that will be done by our staff and done thoroughly, because it does open the doors a bit to setting a bit of a precedent here. I have to admit, I think it is a newbie who goes and does the tech and is making assumptions that this bridge is not new. These are old structures. Surely you wouldn't make those assumptions. You'd look thoroughly at it so we get a better budget, because this is, again, another example that I raised where a budget is given, but it doesn't seem to mean much. It just inflates and then inflates again. So can we put an end to this and get some rigour into the way we do our geotech and our testing in our budget, please?
Thank you, Councillor Vucic. Do you have some wording? Did it sound there like you were wanting to make an amendment to the wording in relation to the COVID, the funding be requested for COVID? I'll just carry on with Mayor Carter, and we can come back to you while you think about the wording of that amendment. Mayor Carter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I find this conversation really interesting, and listening intently to the questions that have been put. And Andy and Calvin and Greg, there's two things that I want to comment on. Firstly, we seem to be finding out things because we're doing investigations. So we're going to build a bridge or replace a bridge. And I assume that what we're being told is that we can only have a bit of a guess until we actually put the spade in the ground and dig it out and find out what the hell we got. We really don't know. But we're putting systems in place, I think you said, Calvin, that said hopefully as we move forward, we will have a better understanding of what we're likely to address so that we get a better estimate of costs, was your response. And so there's two questions. Is why is it that we're putting in systems now? Have there not been systems in place before that have addressed these issues? And secondly, if we are putting new systems in place, how can we be sure, assuming that they work for us and give us a more accurate estimate of costs, that they will then stay in place, that they don't disappear when we have a change of staff. In other words, institutional or local knowledge continues on. And I just wondered, can you please, I don't know, Andy or Calvin or Greg, one of you just respond to both those things? I would have thought that a lot of the stuff we've done, it would have just been normal habit and practice. So it does surprise me when we find that suddenly we have we say it's going to cost 100 and then discover it's going to cost 2 or 3. And secondly, how do we know for sure that whatever we put in place that addresses this issue, as the other councillors have said, doesn't come and bite us in the back again?
Perhaps I can take that through the chair.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, look, it's a good point. In fact, this is a really good governance discussion. So thanks to the elected members, and starting with Councillor Court on the questions put. They're really astute. This is not normal for us. I think we should have some confidence in the guys and what their normal mode is. Contingencies are struck as a standard part of all contracts, and I don't have a percentage in mind, but it's in the 90s for how often that's successful in containing the risk. Every contract, especially subterranean, with a subterranean element, has that risk to it, because you don't know till you've opened the ground. In this case, I'm not going to say that this is an exception, because I think there's been about 3 cases, Andy, in the last maybe 8 months where we've had to come back to you and exceed the contingency fund. So we're alert to this, Mayor Carter, and we'll be having a closer look at it to see if there's a pattern emerging here. I think everything that we need for a queue has been made in the discussion here, and it's useful. But there's, I would suggest that there's no grounds to lose confidence in what our normal process is. As for corporate knowledge and retaining it internally, Mayor Carter, if you look at these old fellas in front of you, most of them have got a bit of vintage with us already, and we've got good handing over of the baton. No, I'm looking at Finch actually. We haven't gone as far as writing exhaustive standard operating procedures for every element of our business. That's a project for the future, but in the meantime, it is also on our mind in lessons learned and retention of being a learning organisation. So all I can do is give you a qualitative assurance that we're certainly sensitive about making mistakes twice, and it's something we try hard to avoid. But we've got good food for thought here, and thanks for the discussion.
Thank you to our CEO, Sean Clark. I'd just like to make a comment, and then we've got Kelly there in her response as the mover. I just wanted to raise that I'm concerned about this, and it's good to hear our CEO, Sean Clark, raise that this is going to be addressed. There are dozens of bridges that need to be addressed in our district. That should be a priority. We have got behind in it, and we need to address that as our priorities for the must-dos before we do the nice-to-dos. So replacing bridges should be everyday things that we're working through in a staged approach. I know that we're doing that now, and I know that bridges can be expensive, but if this was looked at in terms of cumulative cost, cumulative effect, cumulative resource, this would be, a huge risk to our organisation with the number of bridges that we have to replace. I think in terms of the NTA in particular, who's working throughout not just our district but Whangarei and Kaipara, please take this on board, what we've said to you today, and also for our bridges. I think that the last report we did have on the bridges was some time ago, and it's highlighted as a significant risk, like Councillor Vucic has raised, particularly to our economy, and we need to have that as a priority to get around and do those replacements, please. So we've got Councillor Stratford with a closing comment. Oh, sorry, Councillor Radit.
Yeah, just pretty short. I'll just support Anne's comments. I sense a bit of greed here. That's what it boils down to. To you, Kelly, way back in 1994, Waima had a rugby team. And they were playing, not Waima, Otawa. They were playing Waima. And that was my first appointment as a referee. And I got there in an isolated area, and the two touch judges were on horseback, and they were roaring up and down the sideline. The after-match function was boiled mutton, so I'll never forget that place.
Thank you, Councillor Radich. We've got a closing comments from Councillor Stratford.
Before I do, were we leaving the recommendation as is? Yes. Yes.
Councillor Vucic, did you have a response to that?
Yes, because the staff have said verbally that they will be ensuring that they're doing that. There's no guarantee that. So I'm happy to go with that.
What's on the screen?
On the screen, subject and under A, subject to the final review of the claim by Northland Transport Association. Alliance. It should be Northland Transport Alliance.
I'm happy to move that one second.
Yeah, as the movers and seconders, we can do that. Is that all right, Calvin?
Yeah, through the chair, can we just clarify that it's the final review of the COVID claim?
Yep, happy for that.
Yep.
So as the movers and the seconder, you happy with the current wording?
Yes.
Yep.
And I just wanted to check in, when will we be able to drive on this bridge?
Through the chair, we're programmed to be complete on the end of October.
This October.
At the end of October, I think we're looking more.
This year.
This year, yes, this year.
Oh, please, that would be really awesome. Because the dust implications on Ninipi, even with the dust suppressant over summer, Ottawa impacts other roads. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, as I'll just confirm, and Kim will bring that to the vote. And please note that we've made those slight changes to A. So we've got Mayor Carter.
In favour. Sorry, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'm in favour. And we have Councillor Court.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will record my vote as an abstention for this one.
Thank you. Councillor Collard.
In favour.
Councillor Radich.
Aye.
Councillor Stratford.
Aye.
Councillor Vucic.
Yeah.
Member Edmonds.
Yep.
And we have Member Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I do approve now that the A has been amended. Thank you.
Thank you. So the item is carried. We'll be now moving on to the next item. We've got the NTA benefits assessment, item 5.3. So we've got the NTA here to speak to the item. I'll just bring it up here. Do we have someone to speak to the item from staff?
Through the chair, I'll ask Calvin and Aram to talk to this.
Thank you. So do we have a mover and a seconder from the elected members?
Councillor Court, happy to move. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And I'll second it. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got Member Gardner there to second. So Calvin, thank you.
Okay, thank you through the chair. This report was developed back in over Christmas actually and finalised in February 2020 and has been presented to both KDC and WDC. Unfortunately, due to COVID lockdowns and rearrangements and meetings, this is the first opportunity we've had to bring it to the Infrastructure Committee for Far North. What the purpose of this exercise was to go back against the original business case of 2016 to assess primarily the monetary benefits for the region against that business case. And it did identify that there were three primary drivers of any benefit or cost, those being the ownership transfer of Maungahia Road to NZTA, which both WDC and Far North benefited from. The changes in the calculated maintenance costs at a dollar per kilometre, and in those cases, as you're aware, the Far North cost of the maintenance contracts did increase for the two awards, so that negatively impacted on Far North. Noting that to achieve the level of service, that was the market price that came in for the scopes that were developed. So it is potentially foreseeable that those costs would have increased, whether that was an NTA initiative or a Far North isolated initiative. And then offsetting that is the annual operating costs with the establishment of the SSBU. One of the developing areas of savings is coming through is the efficiencies we are getting regional wide from suppliers and consultants through having regional contracts. And we're seeing in the vicinity of 5 to 10% savings applied for a lot of our asset management activities at this stage, and it's starting to move into construction contracts, most recently being the LED infill lighting contract, where there's a joint contract between WDC and Far North. How those savings are able to be achieved is the suppliers are not having to provide 3 individual reports, 3 lots of back office support, and are able to actually provide the services to the network in a single go at a more efficient rate. So, I mean, I guess the other areas that are probably more subjective is we are seeing a decline in the number of customer RFSs. We're not yet seeing that transferring into customer satisfaction as such. So we need to understand why the link is. There's always the concern that people have just stopped calling, and that's why the numbers are reducing. So we need to make sure that that's not the case. And we are also seeing through the development of the regional AMP, the opportunity to lift and improve the quality of the asset management and strategy plan right across the region. I guess the final thing that the NTA has been able to deliver, particularly over the last 12 to 18 months, is the ability to bring resources into the region. So when I commenced in February last year, there were 19 vacancies of the 64 positions, and I believe 6 of those vacancies were in Far North. As of last week, we now have, with the last position starting in October, a full complement of staff in the NTA. So all 64 roles are now filled. And included in that, I think it's five internal staff have had promotions. We've brought 10 specialist staff into the region from other areas of New Zealand and 5 staff from overseas. So we're actually able to attract talent who have quite often said that they wouldn't come to a role for a single district council, and the challenge and opportunity of working across a region is what's attractive to them. So those are some of the more peripheral benefits. So I guess beyond that, just any questions?
Thank you very much, Calvin. Being the mover, Councillor Court, would you like to have the first comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really enjoyed this report, so thank you very much, Calvin, as the author. I see that Far North District Council is presently utilising the greatest percentage of resources, so I'm looking forward to seeing much more positive and favourable outcomes in our auditing and procurement moving forward, so thank you. I'd just like to make an observation. I don't know the 9 people I can see on my screen, hands up, who watched TV1 at 7 o'clock last night. they had an item about roading in New Zealand, and it was led by the freight industry. And they said that the roads in New Zealand are deteriorating and their costs of maintenance have risen by 55% because of damage to their trucks driving on the network. Now, they were talking about the state highway network. They were not talking about local roads. But what really interested me was they had a speaker on from Vehicle Testing New Zealand who said more vehicles fail their warrants in the far north due to damage than anywhere else in New Zealand. I don't know whether that's related to our network or just the quality of our fleet, but it would be really nice if, moving forward, if we could start to capture in these reports where we sit nationally, because it's one thing to pat ourselves on the back and say, aren't we doing wonderful? This looks fantastic. And I'm probably the only person in the far north right now who's excited about the fact that you can't drive anywhere because it's roadworks from one end of Northland to the other. So it's nice to see all that money being spent. But are we patting ourselves on the back for all the right reasons? So, and I know we've got a road efficiency group report at item 6.3. Just really nice, I guess, to capture what I'm trying to say is, where do we sit nationally and are we actually improving? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Court. We have got Kelly next. Thanks.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Calvin, you raised the issue about satisfaction and, the possibility that people have stopped phoning. I wanted to take this opportunity, since this is a live streamed meeting, to remind the public how they would raise a roading issue. So they can email ask.us@fndc.govt.nz or 0800 920 029 is the phone number to call. But from that moment, do you know how long it takes to get to the roading team, and what the time frame for getting back to the customer or getting the problem addressed? Because I know, like, personally, Waikato Road, we've got a number of slips, and I know, sometimes there'll be a cone and then there'll be nothing for a wee bit. So if you could just give us, 5 minutes of what can a customer expect would be lovely. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was muted because I was just asking Aaron, is probably the closest to the coalface, whether he wanted to answer that one. So I'll just spin him around.
Through the chair. Good morning, councillors. The process for customers, in terms of, we get the RFS pretty much same day, typically, and then sort of trying to answer this question in relation to the cone on the side of the road to the flood damage. Like that cone could be there for several months in all reality, depending on the nature of the defect, the funding application process, the reviews by NZTA. So it's regrettable that some things do stay out there for quite some time without any visible action for the community. So how we can message that to the community that we're aware of the problem, hopefully that's made clear by the fact that it's been attended to with some safety delineation. And then with regards to the actual actions that come from that, some of those actions, while we have a desire and a plan, if it's not funded and supported by the agency, sometimes all we end up doing then is having to take away the cone, put up some netting or a timber barrier, and make it safe like that into perpetuity. But the time frames are so variable, I can't give you anything of much more consistency. What I can assure you is that we've made a step change in our organisation for the team about being more proactive in communicating directly with the customer. That's had challenges because some people feel that it's not necessarily their role, or they're not delegated or empowered with a response that's any more positive than thank you, we know about it. Regardless, we are pushing our teams to have those conversations, because even if that's all you can say, it just confirms to the customer that we've got their complaint and that we demonstrate that we do care by being in touch. So it's been difficult to change that culture of leaning into the discomfort of having an awkward conversation by ringing somebody up and sometimes not having anything better more constructive to say other than we've received it. But we recognise that in our customer surveys, communication has been the biggest downfall, so we're working on that space.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Aaron. Great response.
And we've got Councillor Collard next.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Foy. My question was the same as Kelly's in relation to Kelvin's expression that the customer satisfaction was not rising with the RFSs, and certainly Aram has identified the communication effort is pathetic. I have a customer chasing me with an RFS in relation to Tahanga Road, and 3 weeks, no communication whatsoever. I certainly understand the cone thing because there was a cone on beside a broken culvert that was flooded, but no information to the person. And he really thought that he'd been abandoned, was very negative about it. But once he got the call after I instigated it with customer services, he was happy to know what the process was going to be. Up until that moment, he was completely in the dark. And in fact, I'd go so further, just pissed off, typical council was his exact words. And that's not the case. If you can't do a job because there is a problem, just let them know. It's only a phone call. It's simple as. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Collard, and it's good that Aram's already raised that they realise it's an issue and they're working on it. I have got Councillor Vucic. Did you want to raise your point in the chat, or?
No, it's in the chat. It's just a comment there.
Thank you. His comment was just about Fonterra trucks and how they have stats and GPS on all of their trucks, which have been consistent in both their movements for multiple days a week and also the routes that they travel. So that's very consistent information over a number of years and also over a number of regions across the country. We have got Member Edmonds.
Thanks, Felicity. Hey, look, Kelvin, you mentioned there are some times that the funding agency doesn't fund a repair. And you said, look, we just put cones up around it and say we're going to live with that. What kinds of things do they not fund, and how often does this occur?
Through the chair, I think just to elaborate, we don't necessarily leave the cones. We put a more temporary repair in. Often they're to do with slips or resilience type works where there is only a certain level of funding available. And while they're temporarily repaired, they then have to go into the next activity management plan cycle to be prioritised against all the other activities. I guess the reality is there's only a finite level of funding both from Council and from NZTA, and there's prioritisation in place, and sometimes a particular issue doesn't stack up against other issues that are more urgent and compelling in the network. So that's where that comes from. Just if I can, to elaborate on Aaron's point, there is another area where we've identified that we are scoring low in some of this customer feedback, and that is when the survey's being done and the RFS has been closed, the customer hasn't seen a result. And what we've identified in the process is the contractors are programming activity, which may be out into the future, which triggers the closure of the RFS. We're actually working with some of the FNDC team at the moment to look at an additional status to be put into the RFS of work scheduled, with a date against that, so we can run reports and confirm that the work has been scheduled. that will then ensure that when customers are surveyed, they're being surveyed at a point where we understand the work has been completed, which is a different expectation and result to what we're getting at the moment. So, yeah.
Kelvin, just to follow up that, do you ever do work that the funding agency says we're not going to fund?
Through the chair, yes, we do. So, but any of that is council 100% subsidised. So, for example, seal extensions are one of those activities. There are, but those require council approval for us to do it.
I was thinking more of damage or, slips and that kind of stuff.
We tend not to, and primarily because of the significant cost of them and it being a local share burden at 100% subsidy rate. In saying that, there is the $2 million worth of MB funding that's just come to Far North that will be effectively outside of the agency approvals. So part of the requirement of that spending that storm response funding is that it can't be spent on anything that NZTA are already subsidising through their storm plan. So that gives us the opportunity to do things like upgrade culverts or do additional work of preventative measures for storms, whereas NZTA's scope only covers repair and replacement. So it gives us a little more opportunity to go outside the realms of the NZTA funding to do some of the things that I guess might have not quite hit the mark in terms of NZTA's criteria.
Thank you.
Thank you, Calvin. I did have a comment, but I'll ask Councillor Radich, did you have any comments before I spoke, Councillor Radich?
Yeah, thanks, Felicity. I'm not digging at you guys, Calvin, but I have very little faith in the NTA. I deal with a lot of roads over my years as a councillor, many roads. And in most cases, there is a huge delay before things are done. So what I do is simple. I go straight to Fulton Hogan. Council may not like this, but that's the way I do it. I go straight to the top in Fulton Hogan and tell them what the problem is. And in most cases, they go and get it done. That's how I work now. It's all right. Probably other councillors saying, well, where's he coming from? But as I said, I get many complaints from the Hokianga right to the top of the bloody New Zealand in the north. And it is frustrating. But I must say, the other day when Mayor Carter and I went to Henderson Bay and we went through Rototara Road, that's where the old Toro factory is, and the road was bad. Next day, it was done. And I've never seen so much metal put on a road. And yet it is a road that has very little traffic on it. But it got done, and that's a good sign.
Thank you, Councillor Radich, for those final positive comments. I just wanted to raise in the report, I'm sure we all noticed that on page 41, that we weren't in the negatives, we were in the positives. But then on page 42, it did highlight the reasons for that. In particular, the high maintenance costs for our district. And then on further in the report down on page 45, I think that really highlighted what our council's working with. 2,508 kilometres. When you compare that, it's over 1,000 kilometres more than Kaipara District Council. And further to that, our proportion of sealing. We have very high proportion of unsealed roads. And so we need to be familiar with the context of our district, the context of the situation. And also I wanted to recognise that now I've seen the NTA, and what they've done is they've moved a strategy to improve our unsealed roads in particular, with heavy metalling as part of our, what I see the most positive thing with NTA is our asset management. This is the first time that we have done a combined AMP for our roading ever, and across 3 councils. We have the best asset managers, and we have asked for a significant amount of money towards in particular, the heavy metalling, the culvert replacements, and yes, the water tabling. So I think that's a real win. But the thing is, it's not going to happen tomorrow, and we have to make sure that our ratepayers are realistic. Yes, you bought a house on a metal road. That metal road is not going to instantly transform to sealed roads for all of our district. That's not how it works. You buy a house and that's the house it is. It doesn't turn into a mansion automatically, and you're not entitled to that. It's just something that would be really great if it did happen to you. As Anne Court has said previously, it's like you win the lotto. So not everyone's going to win the lotto. But what we can do is have a strategic approach to getting around our network to increase the base course of our metal roads, do proper culvert replacements, do our bridge replacements, and in particular do our drainage so that we get proper crossflow and reduce the number of potholes. So it's probably going to take, I'm not sure, Aaron might be able to tell us, 10 years to get around our full network with the amount of roads that we have and the amount of funding that we've applied for. Can we have a response about realistically how long it's going to take at the rate of funding that we've got and the amount of roads that we've got?
Through the chair, at the moment our rate of investment for gravelling replenishment sits at about 5 to 6% of the network. So it's more like a 20-year return period for the entire network to get to that stage. But in the meantime, we're doing more than just focusing only on metal replenishment, but in the practices of aggressive grading for shape. But with that comes inherent risks relating to the exposure of lack of gravel in certain areas, particularly if we start pulling from the outside to raise a crown on the inside, the outer wheel path will become vulnerable. And those are the risks that we have to guide our contractor through, accepting them and then having contingency to address it. And clearly we then have to be smart about targeting roads that don't have heavy loads that would immediately show those defects come straight through and shoot ourselves in the foot. So we have a plan, we have a process. It's going to take some time and there will be risks inherent with it, but they've started to see a transformation, and I think a paper later in the report will detail a bit of that further.
Thank you very much, Aram and Calvin, and I just wanted to thank you and your team, and us as elected members, we need to be realistic. A lot of ratepayers, we only hear about them when they're pissed off, but we have to think, what's the right level of pissed off that we can accept? So, so I think as staff, it's not an easy job to do when we know our roads need so much work, and it's going to take literally 20 years to get around them all. So so I think that's the end there. So we'll bring that to the vote, and we've got Mayor Carter. Are you there, Mayor Carter? Well, I'll come back to you, Mayor Carter, until you're there. So I'm for. Councillor Court.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in favour.
Councillor Collard.
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Radich.
Yes.
Councillor Stratford.
Aye.
Councillor Vucic.
Aye.
Member Edmonds.
Yep.
And Member Gardner.
Aye.
So we're just going to come back to Mayor Carter. Are you there now? We'll do that as an abstain from Mayor Carter. Not sure where he is. So we'll move on. We've got item 6.1, water tabling, and I'm happy to move that motion, something I'm quite passionate about, drainage. So do we have a seconder?
I'll second, Madam Chair.
There's our mayor. Thank you, Mayor Carter. So do we have a staff member to speak to this item?
Through the chair again, we'll pass that across to Calvin and his team in the NTA. Thank you.
I'm just going to pass this across to Aaron through the chair. Jeff compiled the report, but at the moment he's completing an NZTA audit in plenum, so isn't able to be here. So,
in terms of the report that's in front of you, then pretty much the executive summary is that water tabling is not a depreciable activity at the moment. The drainage asset is a earth line drain. That's a distinction from curb and channel concrete structures. So, and the reasons behind that, it is treated similarly to the formation of a road. And I would probably, from my experience in asset management processes and other councils, that adding more asset to your data, to your inventory increases your burden of depreciation on rates. So while it may be considered an approach to help gain revenue, it also has the catch-22 of as soon as the valuation is set, that is struck on your rates bill, and you are there for that period locked in. So sometimes maybe be careful what you wish for, but that's the summary of the report at the moment. Any questions?
Thank you, Aaron. I don't see anyone highlighting any questions. I have some questions. So thank you for bringing this. I have raised this item about Calvin, I think, might be on mute. I have raised this about the matter of water tables and for them to become an asset so we can collect a separate bucket of money and therefore, do more water tabling. I am a bit disappointed that there are no figures in here about potential impacts on rates, because I am aware that we do get a significant amount of funding from NZTA in our FAR rate, 67%, one of the highest in the country. And in terms of including as an asset as part of sections of roading, as per the third bullet point in the executive summary, to have a more asset-based approach to water tabling activity and allow water tabling costs to be recorded against road sections in RAM, possibly allowing for asset valuations and depreciation in the future. I see Anne said that the FAR rate's now 69%, so even better. Well done. So, that's almost 70%. So I personally would like to see the more asset-based approach, and having that as a separate asset to collect those funds. It will impact rates, but also there's a minimum standard that our ratepayers want to achieve. And as Councillor Radich and Councillor Collett have raised, roading is a significant issue, if not the highest significant issue for our ratepayers, with a huge number of people on metal roads. I can see Councillor Stratford there shaking her head, but there's so many metal roads up where we are rurally, and when you have a metal road that's constantly potholed, etc., because of lack of drainage, I'm sure that they would want some of their rates to be allocated to do the minimum standards for roading. Can I get feedback? I don't know if it'll be the asset manager or Calvin or Aaron about that third bullet point and having that as part of the motion of the current recommendation so that staff can come back to us with those numbers and come back to us with the time frame for including them in the asset management functions.
Yes, through the chair, just in response to that, I think the key input and driver to that is bullet point 1, which is the development of the drainage maintenance plan. So that in itself is going to drive the understanding of the information to be able to provide that. So if I can, I'll take this offline to go back to Jeff on when we can expect that output to be available, and then come back through Andy on when we can provide those figures.
Thank you, Calvin. I look forward to it, and I'm sure our ratepayers do as well. Is there any more comments? And then we'll put this to the vote.
Yeah, I had a quick comment or observation.
Thank you,
I'm very
Councillor
pleased about water tabling. I'm pleased to see that actually is now being included. Just commenting on, Madam Chair, on something else you said, I don't believe we depreciate roads. Certainly asset management is something we should be doing to have a clear idea of the assets. But water tabling really is only good as some of the culverts, and I've seen some pretty small culverts that carry a significant volume of water, which directs the water then onto the road, which causes serious scouring. That to me doesn't make sense. So maybe we should be looking at and given that we have climate change and greater storm events being predicted, I think we should look at considering our water tables that we've got there be larger and our culverts be larger as well.
Calvin, can you just give feedback if that's what the drainage maintenance plan will be considering?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you. So there's no more comments. I'll put this to the vote. We've got Mayor Carter.
Yes, in support, and the last one as well.
I'm sure Kim or Asia's noted that. And I'm for Councillor Court.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In favour.
We have Maddie Radich.
Aye.
Councillor Collard.
Aye.
Councillor Stratford.
Aye.
Councillor Vucic.
Aye.
Member Edmonds.
Aye.
And Member Gardner.
Absolutely in favour, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's unanimous vote, and thank you to the NTA for the presentation. We look forward to that report from the NTA and the numbers around potential costs. So 6.2, we've got the Regional Land Transport Plan. Do we have a move of that?
And Court moving. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that may be the case. Thank you, Councillor Stratford. Would you like to speak to the paper, Council Court?
I just want to do a huge shout out to the author, Glenn Raynham. That is the best paper that's the process that I've ever seen. So well done.
That was concise. So, Councillor Stratford, did you have any comments to build on that?
No. Just, a reminder to the public that what we want to achieve as a district has to go into the Regional Land Transport Plan. And, so make sure you read from page, page 54 onwards if you want to get some insight onto how that how the decisions are made, how the funding is allocated in our region towards roading.
Do we have any other questions there? I do have some comments. I'll just do my comments there. I just wanted to highlight from the paper just how many things there are in roading and how complicated it is and how the funding models aren't simple and how each of the funding buckets are clearly defined and separate. And I think it's hard to relay that information to the public that we can't just go and do whatever we want with all the money. It's ring fenced depending on the different activities and depending on the funding available. So I think that this is a really good summary that Glenn has done, maybe just to highlight that to the public, that we could attach maybe to responses from our customers and to show what we have to go through in order to get the funding from central government as well. So I'll put this to the vote if there's no other. It's Jeff Devine was the author. I've just read on the chat. So Glenn's taking all his glory. So I've got Mayor Carter.
In favour.
Thank you. I'm in favour. Deputy Mayor in Court.
In favour. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Collard.
In favour, thank you.
Councillor Radich.
Yep.
Councillor Stratford.
Aye.
Councillor Busich.
Aye.
Member Edmonds.
Yep.
And Member Gardner.
In favour, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and we can hear your voice there, Maddie. And so we've got another roading paper here, 6.3. This here does say the author is Glenn Raynham, and I'm happy to move that item. Do we have a seconder? Item 6.3.
Happy to second,
Madam Chair.
I think Anne put you there.
Absolutely.
Mayor Carter. And do we have...
she does that all the time.
Do we have staff there that would like to speak to this item?
Yeah, through the chair, I'll take that with Jeff absent again. Just to clarify, we've agreed with Andy moving forward that as we don't all have access to FNDC systems, how the process is, we will do an NTA report, which Glenn or Andy will put a cover report on. So that's why there's some confusion in terms of the author of the report. That's how that just ensures we're able to get these reports through in a timely manner without having system issues with people who are non-FNDC engaged. So the road efficiency group reports, I think the biggest thing to notice about this is it's a start, but the data involved in this is from 2018-19. We are some way ahead of where this data is. The road efficiency group are producing a second report at the end of this year on 19-20 data. And then it will be an annual move going forward. I guess Jeff's outlined a number of things to note within the plan. I think the one that I would like to highlight that we probably won't see a change in results for a couple of years until they do the assessment is the fact that by default using the 1821 WDC asset management plan, which was recognised as one of the top 3 in the country, as the benchmark and baseline for the regional asset management plan, there will be a step change lift in the asset management quality results for both Kaipara and Far North. I think there's a number of things in there. I guess the other point to note is when doing comparisons, they're related to different peer groups. And your peer groups are relative to population and road makeup. So in the peer groups, both Kaipara and Far North are contained within the same peer group, but WDC is not comparable on a like-for-like basis. So that's just something to note when looking at it through. I guess if there's any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Calvin. Do we have any questions from the floor? Okay, we've got quite a lot of roading items there, so we'll move this along. We've got Mayor Carter.
In favour.
Thank you. I'm in favour. Deputy Mayor in Court.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In favour.
Councillor Collard.
In favour, thank you.
Councillor Radich.
Aye.
Councillor Stratford.
Aye.
Aye.
Councillor Busich.
Aye.
Member Edmonds.
Yep.
And Member Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in favour.
Thank you all. So we'll move on to the next item. We have lots of roading items here. So 6.4. And do we have a mover for that item there? I'm happy to move it.
Kelly.
Kelly,
second.
Thank you. And I'll put that to the floor. Items here about this topic here. I'm sure Councillor Radich will have some feedback about that as well. And did you want to start off, Councillor Radich, on this item?
Oh, just to say, when is all this going to start? That's the thing. You know, we have this unseal upgrades and drainage and everything. Well, when's it going to start?
Do you have a response to that, Aaron?
It started.
Is it? Oh my God, I haven't seen any.
So through the chair, reverberation, sorry.
Maddie, you'll just have to mute, please.
Yep.
Aram, you're on mute.
Calvin, Aram?
Well, Aram's just setting himself up there. Do we have any other questions from elected members? Are you there, Aram?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, and we've got Kelly next.
Apologies, through the chair. So works have commenced on Sandhills Road, and I believe up in Te Hapua we've been getting the crusher. I saw the crusher go out last week, so production of gravel is in place and underway. So the timelines there were the targets that we set with the contractor early in July. They're very ambitious targets, but that's what the point was, to try and set a front foot goal and not just step back and wait. In my first 12 months with the organisation, the typical unsealed road maintenance strategy and philosophy was, the analogy I used was salt and pepper and scratch. So that was based on, we don't have a lot of money to spend on the unsealed road. You see around across the entire district, we've got a $5.25 million program there. The number on the attachment talks at a $2.8 million, but that was only summarising the northern expenditure. So north and south combined is $5.2 million of work we've got in the program. But previously, the approach was, as you can see here, this is only touching around 6%, 5.5% to 6% of the road network. And the engineers were apprehensive that using the allocation at that small target of the network, when they have other roads that suddenly are going to go and play up and lacking the ability to respond. That being said, I've just made a step change with the team around, we're going to be proactive. We have to make a sense of change. We spend a lot of time looking through the network, reviewing and chopping up road sections and what we call treatment lengths. We can't treat the whole road, but we can target parts of the road. And so we're going to do focused repairs. We're going to put attention to the metal test certificates and the compliance of the aggregate quality. And we're going to put compactive effort in wherever possible. So that target is in front of the contractor, and that timelines is what we are chasing, and we're measuring them against it, and they have, you know, some performance reports and scores that will be reflective of them meeting it or not. And it's a very front-loaded program, as you can see, with the bulk of it trying to be done before Christmas. There are works in the second half of the year, and those were strategically left in that space because they were not so much a summertime visitor route, but more of a wet weather concern. So we're saying we'll keep that work in the pipeline and set them up in the advance of next winter. Complementing that, we have compaction plans, so grading with a compactor and rollers being put out on the network, and that work is all targeted for the November-December window to try and set up routes that will still, regardless of this compacted effort, become dry and corrugate as the volume of summer traffic hits them. However, we are hopeful that in timing it to be done as close to Christmas as possible, that we buy ourselves, you know, anywhere between 3 weeks to 3 months worth of longevity in that treatment. Then you'll see right at the above of the attachment that showed the annual works plan, there's complementary money put aside in the order of $1.5 million to do drainage. You know, the few roads that have been rolled out first were the ones that were sort of, almost, I won't use the word shovel ready, but effectively they didn't have a huge drainage pre-drainage work program. But the other sites, we'll be looking at culvert extensions and culvert upgrades where the sizes are inadequate, and complementary preparation of the overlay of gravel. So you'll see if you look at the numbers, there's quite a heavy loading of the money for drainage that is in parallel to the investment on the Unsealed Road. And this is all, we still have, of course, the salt and pepper scratch treatment for the remaining balance of the network. And we have set aside some contingency of gravel to respond to all incidents where land use change, forestry movements. We've had Mangamuka Gorge closure, see logging traffic diverted on previously strengthened routes to other directions now to get to their destinations, and we've had to respond to that and bond those particular parts of the route with additional metal. I just want to also add that in addition to that, so this program of work is funded from maintenance and renewals and also some of the MB redeployment support. We are also coordinating all of this with the summertime Unsealed Road dust suppressant program. So there's the contract which we hope to have that awarded by the end of this week for the up to 50 roads, unsealed roads that have over 160 houses whose frontages will be treated with the dust suppressant product. So wherever possible, the coordination of the program of work that we either place metal, graded and compacted is done in advance of and complemented with the application of the dust suppressant to really give longevity and good quality road finish. Within that, there will be no doubt increases of speed as the roads improve, and with speed comes dust, and the perpetuating cycle and story of the nuisance that generates is something we brace ourselves for, but we understand what we're dealing with, and we will deal with the situation as best we can. So I think that summarises the detail in the report, and a technical, more of a layman and planned description of what we were doing.
Thank you very much, Aram. Did you have any comments to follow that up, Councillor Radich? You see on page 79 the list of roads. 79 is the list of roads. It's really small. You have to zoom in.
Yeah, I see that. But, Aaron, what I'm trying to, this dust suppression. Where is the measurement taken from? Is it the side of the road, or is it district council owned area of the road? Where is the measurement? I want to know.
From the edge of the carriageway is where the measurement to the house is taken from, as best possible with the Google Earth and road mapping tools. It hasn't been walked with a measuring wheel or a tape in the field.
So you mentioned the edge of the carriageway. What do you mean by that? Is that on the edge of the road, the side of the road?
The side of the road, with the gravel.
All right, at the edge of the middle, right?
Yep.
On the side of the road. All right. Fine.
Thank you, Councillor Radic. We've got Councillor Vucic. Are you there, Councillor Vucic? We've also got Mia Carter after Councillor Vucic.
Sorry about that. I had this up on mute as you right picked up. Just a general question here. Looking at the roads, I was intrigued by the pictures and how badly potholed it was. It picked up the number of deficiencies that were observed, and it said inadequate drainage, incorrect crossfall, and insufficient pavement thickness. Now, that is some of the very basic things on a gravel road. If our maintenance was being done correctly, why are we picking up those things there? If I can just have a comment on it.
Through the chair, if I may jump in before Aram, is the report from Hutchinson's was commissioned and produced in August 2019, and the NTA have used that as the basis for developing their programme and addressing the concerns. So it's really to give you a flavour that we have been auditing their practices and the contractors' practices and condition of the road, and the NTA have been responding to that. Anything else you want to add to that, Aram?
I'll just take this one from Aram through the chair. I guess earlier in the meeting you saw the impact of the cost increase on the maintenance contracts on Far North. The road conditions are a result of the investment of the past. What we're seeing here now is the ability to use the asset data. These are asset-driven and inspection-driven activities to create database prioritised programs which have never existed in the past. You'll see in the next agenda item you've got a fully itemised capital works program. The first time that was created was last year. This is the first, as Aram said, moving from a reactive space of unsealed road maintenance to the data-driven, prioritised, proactive space to address those issues of the past. So it's recognised this has probably taken a few years to get off the ground, but in reality those maintenance contracts have only just finished their second year, and we're starting to get some real data that assists these decisions. So it's acknowledged that the roads are not in the condition they need to be, but it's also not an overnight fix to do it.
Thank you. It's taken a while to get here, but at least we're starting to get here.
Thank you, Councillor Vucic. We've got Mia Carter and then Kelly Stratford, Councillor Kelly Stratford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to pick up on the comment Maddie made and Aram's reply around our matrix, dust suppression, and how we measure. And just make it clear, it's one of the things we're having this matrix meeting next Wednesday at 1 o'clock, so that we can have a general discussion about it. But so no one's confused, well, it's true that we do some measurement from the roadside to a house. A lot of our measurement is done in an office, on a Google map, on the legal road line as opposed to the practical road line. It's one of the reasons, Maddie and I had a chat about this when we were out at Parapara the other day. It's one of the reasons why there is some distortion yet to be addressed. The staff have done their absolute best to get it right, but what they read off a map as opposed to what you read when you go out on the road are two different things. And it's just historical. It'll take us a while to catch up, but it's a good example of where our metrics, well, I say the staff have done a bloody excellent job. Nevertheless, it's not accurate yet. We all understand that. We're working hard on it. And I wouldn't want anyone to be confused and think all our roads and the distances from the house, from the side of the road to the actual side of the road to the house are all we've done, because that's not correct. Some of it is done from Google Maps, etc., and they're not 100% accurate.
So, Mayor Carter, how are we going to explain this to the ratepayer who's got the problem of dust? How are we going to explain that to him?
Maddie, that's one of the reasons why we're having the discussion on Wednesday of next week, so that we can actually all understand and say to them, we're doing our best to get it updated. It's a good start, but we're a long way away. I mean, you've brought the, I can't think of the Kai Mau Mau Road, for example, where we've said we've got 9 or 11 houses and there's only 3. It's those sorts of deficiencies that we'll pick up as we go on. But we've had to start somewhere, and we're getting better.
Thank you, Mayor Carter. We've got Councillor Stratford.
Everybody's pretty much covered what I was going to say, but I do want to say that this report it has been really valuable, the Hutchinson Consulting Engineers report, auditing our roads and the recommendations that they put out. It's good to see that we've implemented this into our annual plan work program of works and roading. And what Aaron said about he mentioned measuring this, so it would be good to come back perhaps this time next year and just have a look at what we've done with regards to what was identified in this report, like the culverts and hang on, let me just get back to the beginning of the report. The drainage, the cross floors, and the pavement thicknesses. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Stratford. I just had some final comments about the report.
Can I just come in here for a moment, Felicity? Just very quickly. Just looking on page 79 in regard to unsealed road upgrades. Now, Mayor Carter and I went out to Parapara to their meeting, and it was a well-attended meeting. And man, one of the worst hills I've ever seen, Parapara. It is a deadly hill, and yet it's not on this list. Look at the other roads that are in my area that I know very well. They're no comparison to Parapara.
Thank you, Councillor Radich, and I'm sure Aram's aware of that section of road.
It should have been down. Should have been down.
Okay, point of order. Thank you, Councillor Radich. So you've spoken a number of times.
Through the chair, can I just clarify that is one of the roads that's been added subsequent as part of the reactive part of this process? Aram's just confirmed that.
Thank you very much for that confirmation, Calvin. And if that list can please be updated. My comments were just that please can this list be made public in a press release. I think that's really important that the public know that we are being proactive about this and that these works are being done so that our council is finally, and it's great that the staff have been doing this work because they're doing exactly what we've asked. This is a clear example of moving from reactive to proactive. This is a clear example of fixing the issue before it becomes an issue. A lot of these roads here are coastal routes that we know are going to become an issue over summer. We're doing the works in October, November before it becomes an issue. We are highlighting this as works to the contractor before the construction season so they can ensure that they have capability to deliver. And I just wanted to thank Calvin and Aram, and I don't know if it's you, Andy Finch, and our CEO, Sean Clark, for this move that we haven't done before and we should have done a number of years ago. But this is the change in our culture of our organisation that we need to see more of, and well done to your team. Did you have a response, Sean Clark?
Thanks very much, Councillor, and we'll pass that on. I just want to, you're right to name numerous names because this can't be done by any one or even two people. I mean, everyone that you're seeing on the screen plus a crowd of hidden people are working hard at this, so it's really good to get acknowledgement that we're heading in the right direction. Thank you very much for what we're doing, but I know Andy would sing Kelvin's accolades if he had a chance, because we're seeing really good results out of the NTA leadership culturally and materially. So thanks for noticing. No, I noticed that Councillor Radich is still not fully satisfied, but he is on my mind constantly as the canary in the mine. When I can get Councillor Radich to smile, we'll be there, Kelvin. Thanks, dear. Thanks.
So we'll just bring that to vote. Mayor Carter?
In favour.
I'm in favour. And Cord?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In favour.
Thank you, Councillor Collard.
Thank you. In favour.
Councillor Radich?
Aye.
Councillor Stratford?
Aye.
Councillor Vucic?
Aye.
Member Edmonds?
Yeah.
And Member Gardner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in favour.
Thank you. And so that item's carried. We'll move on to item 6.5, our topic of the day about roading again. Do we have a mover for that item? I'm happy to move that item. I thought that Councillor Court may want to move that item there, but
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Stratford. And do we have speakers? I can see your hand is raised there, Councillor Court. You're on mute, Councillor Court.
Sorry, I can't unmute it fast enough to move it or second it. I just had a question regarding, or two actually, the new footpath unsubsidised on page 173. It's just got an item there, Community Board to advise Kaikohe Hokianga Community Board, and that's also appeared in my roading portfolio holder meeting agenda. So I just wanted to draw that to their attention so that they could provide some feedback. And the second one was on page 176, seal extension unsubsidised. I'm not sure where we're sitting with the current year. So this is the 2021 Capital Works Program. These two here, Porotoo Road and Puketi Road, are carry forwards from last year. Can somebody advise me where we're sitting on the selection of the current year program, please?
Do we have a response from Calvin or Andy?
Through the chair, yeah, we've currently got our carryover projects from last year, which we're bringing on. The $1 million that was allocated, we're still working through the validation of the data to ensure that it is appropriate that we do that road, as we touched on before, just to make sure, obviously, that the matrix was developed. And it's just going through the same as we have done with the other sites, just to validate some of those traffic counts, to make sure that it is the correct sites that we're doing. I think that's still continuing. Once that does happen, then we'll be in a position to be able to confirm what that site is.
Just in addition to that, through the chair, there's a paper going to full council on the As a Sealing program update in the September council meeting. One of the things we highlight in that is the significant size of the sealing program for 2021. We've taken into account not only the carry forwards and the subsidised and unsubsidised, but also the TIF funded and PGF funded program. So I think there's more discussion to be had on that program for this year at the next council meeting, Councillor Court.
Thank you. We have Is it Kelly there? I'm just looking at the chat.
That might be an old one, but
sorry,
I have nothing to say.
Do we have any other comments? I have some comments about this one. Maddie, are you speaking or you're on mute? Maddie? Maddie, we can't.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
Mayor Carter, when we travel up to Henderson Bay, we talked about funding of unsubsidised for sealing, which is $3 million for this year. And I said to him, because I'm not happy with the metrics, which roads are up for sealing, because we did have a lot of flack regarding Kumi Road, but a lot of people don't just understand that Kumi Road was sealed because it was a high maintenance road. It's simple as that. I said to Mayor Carter, really that in regard to which roads we should seal, it should come back to the councillors, not to NTA or whoever's in staff dealing with which roads are going to be sealed. The reason why I say that is because we know the roads. We know the importance of the roads. We have a fair idea of the traffic count on the roads. And more important, we know how many people that live on those roads. And when we comes to the stage when the decision is made on which road is being sealed, it's usually wrong. It's usually wrong. And that's why we get a lot of flack from the ratepayer, because they catch on. They're not dumb. And they find the metric system a big joke. And that's what I'd like to see, is that when we come to sealing middle roads, that it should come back to us councillors, in the Bay area, in the Hokianga, Kaiko area, and up in the far north here in Te Hiku. That's all I got to say.
Through the chair, if I may comment that we were to bring a paper to this committee to get approval for this year's sealing programme. We decided that we would defer that to the full council meeting on the 24th to allow all councillors to participate in that debate. And as per previous years, the elected members have the opportunity to sign off on the recommended programme, or alternatively not take officer recommendation and put other projects into that programme, taking others out. Thank you.
And I'd just make the point, Madam Chair, if I might, that we're having this meeting on the next Wednesday, so that we can have a prelim on that, because I want us to know what we're talking about when we get in. But I just say again, the whole purpose of the matrix is to take the politics out and to make sure that we're all aware of the need, the greatest need, wherever it might be across our district. And so that we can understand that there may be a road in the back of the Hokianga that's in more need than a road over at Russell. That's the whole purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikhail. Are there any other comments? I'm just going to, we've got Dave Collard. Would you like to speak to your comments in the chat?
Just to follow up from where Maddie's at, yes, it'd be great to have that that input, but it really doesn't matter which roads we seal. We're always going to be wrong according to somebody. And it is follows on from you can't please all the people all the time. So, becoming a political decision, somebody would be wrong. Maddie would pick the wrong one, or I would pick the wrong one, or Anne would pick the wrong one. Whoever it is, doesn't matter. There's always going to be some wrong decisions there. So there is no silver bullet that fixes it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Collard. I'm just going to note in the minutes that I didn't speak and I abstained, from having comment about this item, and I'm going to abstain from voting. So we'll bring that to the vote. So we can bring that up there.
In favour, Madam Chair.
Yes, and I abstain. And we've got Councillor Court.
In favour, thank you, Madam Chair.
And Councillor Collard.
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Radich.
Yeah, aye.
Councillor
Aye.
Stratford. Thank you.
Aye.
Councillor Vusic.
Aye.
Member Edmonds.
Aye.
And Member Gardner.
Thank you. I'm in favour, thanks.
Thank you. So that matter is carried. I do note in the chat that we have been on here for some time. Can we please have I'll allow 7-minute break. So that'll be at 12:02 sharp. Just to give you a toilet break and grab a coffee, and we'll see you back there. So quick, smart.
Just check your timing there, Chair.
It's only 11:35.
It's only 11.
11:42. Sorry.
We should have taken it and run.
Yeah, I'm not that liberal with my break time, so sorry.
11:42. Thank you.
11:40. Just need to check with our staff. We've got quorum. Eddie.
Yes, you're good to go for quorum.
Fantastic. So we are now up to item 6.6, being our very concise business report. I am business report. And I'm happy to move that. Is there a seconder, please? Oh, yes.
I'll second that, Dave Collett.
Thank you. And can I open the floor to questions? I'm sure there are a number of questions. It's a very lengthy report. I was being facetious when I was saying it was concise. Oh, no questions? Okay then.
Hi there.
Oh, okay.
Hi there.
Councillor Arditch.
Yeah, I just went through this business report, and on page 188, regarding, I see, is Aram, are you still there? You and Ann?
Aram is left, but I'm still here, Councillor Rich.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to go back to page 188 regarding Church Road. Now, as you all know, it's been a very controversial road, this regarding the subsidised dealing. Now, is it the Karai Inn or is it off State Highway 10? I want to get that correct.
I'm just confirming that it is contained within the paper that's coming to full council at the end of the month. It is the section of road that was passed by council resolution on the 29th of August 2019.
We know that.
Yeah, and I'm just...
Which end?
Yeah, I'm just looking through the... Sorry. The State Highway 10, from what I can see. I will confirm that before Wednesday's workshop, though.
What do you mean by Wednesday's workshop? When's that?
There's a workshop on Wednesday about the dust prioritisation matrix, and I'll bring the information to that workshop.
Is that next week?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, you need to get that right, because Andy Finch says, no, it's on Karai Inn, and Aram tells me it's off State Highway 10.
Yeah, no, Andy's corrected that since State Highway 10.
Yeah, he has he?
It's the State Highway 10 end. I've just opened the business case up now. So, yep.
All right. We need a business case on that, because it's going to erupt big time.
So in the paper that's coming to council at the end of this month, the NZTA business cases are included within those papers.
All right. So a decision will be made then.
Yeah, correct? I think I'm trying to remember the recommendations offhand through the chair. They are to reconfirm the decisions made of the August 19 council meeting based on the information provided in this latest update.
In regard to that road, was another road count put down, or did they only have one road count? Are you aware of that?
A subsequent road count was completed either late last year or early this year at the insistence in collaboration with NZTA. And that the updated road count data is in the NZTA business case.
Because when I questioned Andy Finch regarding the count, the road count, he said no, it was on the Katai Inn that the road count was made on the Katai Inn. Now, he's our general manager. He should, what he says should be correct. But I can tell you, We need to get this right because everyone's fired up on this one.
Through the chair, if I've misled the councillor in any of my responses, then I'll formally apologise. We are bringing as we said, a full paper to council on the 24th that gives every elected member the opportunity, as Calvin has said, to reaffirm what this year's ceiling programme is. It's based on officer recommendation and previous council resolution. And again, if elected members choose to vary that programme, that of course is their right to do so. Thank you.
So that latest road count, can you make that available to us, please? I haven't seen it.
Through the chair, I understand that the road count, as Calvin has already identified, is included in the NZTA business case that is accompanying the paper that's going to council on the 24th. So it is available to elected members. Thank you.
All right, so it'll be available on the 24th, eh? All right. Thank you, Andy.
We've got Councillor Vucic next.
Thanks, Madam Chair. It's a comprehensive report. Thank you, Andy. On Program Darwin, which is on page 22 or something, I note there is a comment saying that it's been significantly or adversely impacted by demands on increasing complexity. We can't make good governance decisions without good asset information. So I'm just wondering, Andy, if you can give me a comment on ways of upping the priority or achieving a faster speed on that. That's something I think is crucial for us to go ahead in our decision making in many areas. So comments, please.
Through the chair, staff do recognise the importance of progressing Program Darwin, and we are looking at, or we are building a condition survey program that will support that. Of course, with anything, it is a balance around priorities, and Program Darwin is being run in parallel with building the long-term plan. And of course, elected members will be aware they've had 4 workshops already from the IAMS team on the long-term plan and a final one tomorrow. So it is about balancing the resources around developing our statutory and required documents along with pushing along the asset management work. Fully recognise the need to give that as much horsepower as we possibly can alongside the other priorities we have.
Thank you, Mr. Finch. We have Councillor Collard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in relation to the effects of recent weather events and the impact on sectors of the community, and I'll perhaps speak about Carker Street and Ahipara because I do know this in particular, but here we have a stormwater issue that is not going away until such a time as we fix it. What sort of timeframes are involved in taking some positive action to correct this problem? It still is a problem. I think the Mayor went up Carker Street the other day and said you needed a 4-wheel drive to do that. Not all emergency vehicles have that ability. So there are some public safety issues involved in this particular one, but looking at some of the other water damage or stormwater damage, we have got some issues around the county, around the district.
Through the chair, acknowledged it is part of our overall work programme. At this point, I need to come back to you offline around timing for a permanent solution for Carker Street, but certainly it's not something that's a quick fix and is going to be achieved in the next 2 or 3 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. I just had a question as well about the animal shelters. They're on page 203 and 202. Can it please be confirmed that the Kaitaia Animal Shelter will be constructed this construction season? It does say that that the construction is to be October, November. It is now September, and it's just said that building consents have been applied for. So can it be confirmed that the building consents are issued and that construction will commence this construction season as per the October or 19 dates for the Northern Shelter, and also an update about 2002, the Southern Animal Shelter matters there and how that's going to be addressed this construction season.
Can I get Dean to comment on that, please?
Madam Chair, yes. We did have an item at the Regulatory and Compliance Committee yesterday where we updated on the thinking and the expected next steps for the Southern Shelter. As far as the Northern Shelter is concerned, my understanding from project manager is that this will happen in this construction season. I can't answer whether the building consents have been issued as yet. I can check on that and report back, but I don't know the answer to that right now. So Northern Shelter in the summer, and we do expect to see the other shelter also built this financial year. But there's some way to go in terms of going to market and reporting back on the preferred options going forward. There are some cost aspects related to the Southern Shelter that need to be reported back on. So, yeah, long-winded answer, Northern Shelter this construction season.
Thank you, Dean. So the building consent has been lodged. You can confirm that for the northern area?
I can't confirm that, but we can check that and report back.
Let's do that. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you for that.
Can I come in here, Felicity?
You just muted yourself, Felicity.
Sorry, we've already said we'll take that to the vote. Sorry, Councillor Radich.
Well, we've got a big problem. Hang on.
Point of order. Sorry, you've already had the right to speak. And
we're talking animal shelters in PX.
Thank you. So we've got Mayor Carter.
Favour. Sorry.
I'm in favour. Councillor Court.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In favour.
Councillor Collard.
Yes, in favour. Thank you.
Councillor Radich. Councillor Stratford. Councillor Stratford. Councillor Busich.
Aye.
Are you there, Councillor Stratford? I can see you. Oh, she can't take it off mute. Councillor Stratford, thumbs up if you are for it.
Councillor Stratford has commented aye in the chat, and Councillor Radich is now unmuted as well.
Councillor Radich, how do you vote? Oh, he's on mute again.
Is this regarding the Northern Animal Shelter?
Sorry, Councillor Radich, are you in favour or against or abstain? Against. Okay. Councillor Edmonds.
Yep.
And Member Edmonds and Member Gardner. Member Gardner, are you there?
So Member Gardner.
Sorry, yes, I am in support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So that item is carried, and the next. So that's the finish of the public items that I can see there, and the next matter is to move into public exclusion. Can I move to go into public exclusion, Mayor Carter?
I'll second.
And we don't need to go through the list again there. Yes, so Mikata is 4, I am 4. Councillor Court.
In favour, thank you.
Councillor Collard.
In favour.
Councillor Radich. Councillor Stratford. Councillor Vusic.
Aye.
Member Edmonds.
Yep.
And Member Gardner.
In favour, thank you. But I don't have an agenda for the for the excluded item.
I'm back.
Apologies, Adele. I will email that through to you.
Thank you. So we'll now move to the different agenda, the public exclusion and the recording has started again. I'd just like to thank you all for your attendance at the meeting today, and we'll conclude with the karakia. I don't have one here planned, so I'm sure that Councillor Stratford will do our karakia today. Thank you, ngā mihi.
Ora. Kia tau tō rangi Mārie ki runga i ngā iwi o te ao. Let your peace reign on all the people of the world. Āmene.
Āmene. So our meeting's finished, kua motu, for today, and